I'm an educator myself. I teach at Yale University. I also do a lot of work in student support in my role as a head of college on campus. And that was when I got really interested in the science of well-being. In my role as a head of college on campus, I was seeing so many college students who were experiencing anxiety and depression and just like deep levels of stress. And so I decided to develop a new class on the science of happiness, all the skills that you need to kind of feel happier in your daily life. It went a little bit viral on campus. It became Yale's largest class ever. This is the image that what it looks like when over 1,000 students are taking your course. But it's worth noting that this whole process of kind of thinking about the science of happiness, thinking about how we could promote student well-being and how we could promote educator well-being was happening all the way back in 2018, when frankly, I think it was pretty prescient to be thinking about educator well-being. Now, fast forward 2021, 2022, we are in a dumpster fire of a time when it comes to our well-being. Educators are more stressed than ever. Over the last 2 years, we're experiencing burnout at unprecedented levels. Everyone's just feeling frustrated and angry and just really wanting to get back to normal life and looking for strategies that they can use to feel better. And so in my short 10-minute talk, I want to walk through what I think the science of happiness shows is the top 3 insights that we should all be bringing together, right? The kinds of things that every single educator can do today, this week, this month to feel a little bit better. Starting with top insight number 1 that comes from the science of well-being, which is that if we want to be happier, we need to find ways to navigate negative emotions. It'd be nice if we could get rid of all these negative emotions, feeling frustrated, feeling sad, feeling anxious. But the bad news is that they're not going away, right? Circumstances of life are just going to bring around negative things and we're going to experience negative emotions. But in some ways, that's a good thing, right? We wouldn't want to get rid of negative emotions because the research shows that negative emotions are there to tell us something. They're there to tell us things that we need to be paying attention to and the things that we need to react to and make changes to in our lives. We also know from the research that the act of trying to suppress our emotions, like trying to actively shut off, your sadness when you're feeling sad or your anger if you're feeling angry, these things can have really negative consequences. One study by the Stanford psychologist James Gross had subjects in the lab pretend that they weren't feeling as sad as they were. And he found these interesting consequences. First, he found that people had cognitive problems after the simple act of doing things. People performed worse on a memory test. They performed worse on decision-making tasks. The act of suppressing your negative emotions is making you think worse. But it's also having a significant negative effect on your body. Even in just this short little laboratory task, Gross and his colleagues found that people showed symptoms of cardiac stress just through the simple act of trying to suppress their sadness. And so the act of feeling happy as an educator means that we need paths to get through our negative emotions. And the research shows that you can't go around negative emotions, you have to go through them. But there are some great strategies that come from the research about ways that we can do this better. And one of my favorite practices builds on the mindfulness we just heard from Sarah in the yoga practice. It's a meditation practice known as RAIN that allows you to recognize and accept your negative emotions. RAIN is an acronym for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And it goes something like this. Imagine you experience a negative emotion, you get some frustrating email, you have a tough conversation, you see something scary in the news, you realize you're feeling something not so good. And the science shows you can now take on this process of RAIN. You just sit down, as though you were about to meditate, and you decide to do it, starting with the first step R, which is to recognize what's happening. Like you're experiencing a negative emotion, but what is it? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? Is it like a little bit of overwhelm? Like really try to label and recognize which emotion you're in. Then you do the next step, A, allow, which is the hard one. You allow that feeling to be there just as it is. Back pre-COVID, maybe you had like an annoying neighbor who would kind of show up at the house unannounced. You didn't kick that person out. You weren't super happy to have them there, but you just kind of let them be. That's what you're going to do with this emotion. You say, hey, frustration, overwhelm, I'm just going to allow you to be there. But you give your brain something to do while you're letting that emotion stay there. And that's the next step, which is investigate. With a little bit of interest and care, what is this emotion doing to your body? Is it making your chest get tighter? Maybe your jaw is clenching. Maybe you feel your neck kind of rising up. Maybe you have a craving for something. You want to, grab a drink or grab something to eat or check your social media, right? Don't act on those urges, but just notice they're there. And the investigate step is important because the science shows that emotions are kind of like a wave. They'll peak, but if you stay there and pay attention to them, they'll sort of go down over time. And investigate just kind of gives your brain something to do while you're letting that emotion flow through. But then you end with the final step, which is to nurture. With some self-compassion, which we'll talk about in just a second, what can you do to take something off your plate to really nurture yourself? Like do something that will really take care of yourself. research shows that meditation practices like RAIN can reduce things like burnout in first responders, in groups that are really going through a tough time right now. And also, this can also reduce things like burnout in palliative care workers, individuals that are facing true negative emotions all the time. So it can be a powerful technique for educators to use to navigate their negative emotions better.